Piet Viljoen joins us for our slot where we talk to the wise people of the markets and get some insight into this week what at BizNews has been the Piet Viljoen show. The piece that you wrote on Naspers could not have been better timed. You wrote it.
No, I wrote it on Sunday.
Published on Monday. And then early morning Tuesday, the Chinese government throws the book at 10 cent. And a consequence of that, the share price fell. And I guess when you look further down the line, it's pretty serious that they've now switched their attack to 10 cent. Just by way of people who maybe don't understand the intricacies and why this is so important to us. Why does 10 cent have such a big impact on South African retirement savings?
Yeah, I guess that's the key question. And if one cast your mind back to 2001, Naspers bought a 30-odd% stake in a company called 10 cent at the time for $20 million. Today, 10 cent is probably one of the best businesses in the world. It is a Chinese internet-enabled business. In other words, it offers services and products over the internet to a wide set of customers in China and makes a lot of money doing so. And has become a very big business. And as a result, Naspers has become a very big business and has become a significant portion of the Johannesburg All Share Index. Naspers and its sister company Process, I think, make up around 20-25% of the index. So any South African who has investments managed by a pension fund manager that sort of manages with reference to the index has a significant exposure to 10 cent effectively through Naspers/Process. And for the past 20 years, that's been a great thing. I mean, it's created tremendous wealth for South Africans specifically and South African pension funds generally.
So we are all exposed to what goes on in Hong Kong because of what has been a phenomenal investment. However, the fact that the Chinese Communist Party is now taking aim at capitalists, and Pony Ma of Tencent being one of the most visible Chinese capitalists, is not good news, not just for Tencent, but for South Africans too.
Yeah, I guess when politicians get over involved in regulating businesses and sort of defining the boundaries within which they can operate, I guess that's negative for number one, the future profitability of that business, because the reason for the regulation is to tamp down the profitability. And the second thing is it also is negative for the rating of the business because investors will expect less growth going forward. So where the rating might have been high in the past because of very high past growth rates and high expected future growth rates, maybe the rating is a lot lower now than it has been in the past, or should be now than it has been in the past. And as an example of that, one can only look at the Russian stocks. There's some great businesses that operate in Russia, which is also another very big market, very profitable market. But these businesses trade at significant discounts to their peers in developed markets because of the government's intervention there. So I think it's a similar sort of dynamic playing out.
So what exactly has the Chinese government done?
Well, specifically with regards to Tencent, there's two things that I'm aware of that they've done over the past while. The first is they have taken away Tencent Music Entertainment's proprietary right to the music rights, to the music publishing rights, and saying that must be available to everyone. They can't be the only ones profiting from selling music streams on the internet. So that has affected that business, that part of Tencent dramatically. And just, I think on Monday night or Tuesday night, the regulator also said that they must stop providing online gaming, not gambling, games to minors, to young children, because they said it's, what was the words they used, as opium for the mind. So, and that's also, online gaming is a significant portion of the income. I think it's about a third of their revenue, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure what segment of that is made up by minors playing online games, but it'll hurt the profitability. There's no doubt about that.
So the government is now has been moving in China against many companies. The most famous of which was Alibaba with the listing of its Alipay, and we saw Didi, the Chinese version of Uber, being listed in New York, and then the rules were changed thereafter. And I guess that's the question, isn't it? That if the government decides to change the rules, then if you're a company in a country, whatever country you might be in, there's a whole new risk or layer of risk that gets brought into it for investors.
Exactly. I think if the government starts changing rules arbitrarily to suit policy and not market clearing prices, I think you see a discount being placed on assets. Again, referencing other emerging markets, South Africa is one of those. We've seen our government being very inconsistent on policy with regards to the mining sector, and all mining companies traded a big discount to other global mining companies because of that. So it's a similar sort of environment, I think.
What I found interesting was I was actually in the room in Davos in January 2018 when Cyril Ramaphosa had just been elected at the presidential elective conference of the ANC. Surprisingly, he wasn't expected to win, and he did. And I recall so clearly that he said there were three things that the government would be focusing on. One of them being corruption, as you can imagine, but the other big one being the regulations that would be rational and uniform and secure. Now, consistent regulations or a consistent regulatory regime. Now, he might have been talking to a global audience, but has he followed through on that since he did become president shortly thereafter?
I guess those were his intentions when he became president. But as I say, the road to hell is paved with good intention. I think he is in charge of a fractious party. I think it's very hard to get any sort of unanimity on policy and on regulations because there are parts of the party that don't see eye to eye with other parts of the party. And I think, and he must have known it when he came in. I mean, he was vice president to ex-president Jacob Zuma, so he must have known what the dynamics within the party were. And I think he's been spending the past 3 years just trying to get that right. So far, from what we can see on the outside, unsuccessfully.
Is he making progress though?
I don't know. Let's see. There's talk of a cabinet reshuffle soon. Let's see what happens there. But from what you and I and anybody else can see on the ground, no, he's not making any progress at all.
So a cabinet reshuffle, and you mentioned earlier mining, and one of the big problem ministers as far as investors are concerned is the mining minister, who's a communist trade unionist, Gwedi Mantashe. The fact that he's also been implicated in corruption over these power shifts doesn't do his chances much good. What kind of a mining minister would one be looking for? Could you give us perhaps a best possible scenario there?
Well, start off with probably a minister with a non-communist mindset, a minister who actually understands how business works, understands how markets work, and understands how job creation works. And so far, for a long time, we haven't had very many of those in any seats of power. So that's what one we're looking for. Who that we, I don't know, but you would want somebody who can rebuild the trust that has been lost between the business sector and the government sector because of many factors. The main factor being that many people in government do not understand the market and how it allocates resources efficiently, or more efficiently than government decree, at least.
And yet those same people would be saying, look at how much tax is being paid at the moment by the mining sector. Look at the share prices and the profitability of the mining sector. Why should we change something when it isn't broken?
Yeah, well, I think that's the cycle. I think if the regulatory environment were different, they would have been earning more tax right now. But they're not. And that tax is going to reduce again at some point in the future as the cycle develops and declines, as these cycles always do. So I think that would be extremely short-sighted to say, well, look how well it's going now. It's all fine. It's not.
So it really is taking a longer-term view of legislation, which I guess that's what legislation is. You should be, if you want to have consistent legislation, must be writing it today for 50 years' time, not for 50 minutes.
That's right, and it should be such so that if you want to build a mine, you should know where to go to, where to apply for a license. You should know that the process of applying for a license is a straightforward process, a rigorous process, but straightforward. And you should know how that works. And it shouldn't change every 6 months or every 3 months. And you shouldn't be needing to deal with different people every 3 or 6 months. So yes, that consistency is key, and that will optimize tax receipts through the cycle, not only at the peaks, like we're going through right now.
Piet, just two other points I'd love to get your insights on. Expropriation of land without compensation, or EWC, as the acronym is. How serious is that?
I'm not sure. I don't know. The fact that it's even been talking about is serious, because I think if you want to attract capital investment, create jobs, the last thing you want to do is expropriate land, because that takes any security one has away. So you're not going to build a factory in a piece of land that can be given to somebody else tomorrow. So there will be no factory and there will be no jobs. So even the fact that has been spoken about at any level of government is a big negative. I'm not sure it will become policy in a reasonable form or any form at all, but just the fact that it's being spoken about is a big negative.
And the second thing is we haven't yet absorbed what happened during July 2021. What would need to be done to put people's minds at rest, and indeed to say South Africa is investable, despite the optics that were pretty bad?
The optics were desperate. Number one, the fact that our security cluster ministers still don't even agree on what happened there is, maybe if they can start agreeing on what happened there. Secondly, if those who are responsible for what happened could be brought to book, that would be a good thing. And thirdly, I think our security cluster, police, army, etc., need to show the public that they are actually in control of this situation. For all intents and purposes, at the moment, it looks like they're not in control of any situation. So those are the things that, from my point of view, need to happen, and they're not happening at the moment.
You're listening to the BizNews Power Hour, brought to you by the team at biznews.com.